right, today we are in workshop number 5, and we've extended it an additional hour today. Hopefully we can get through. If not, we do have a workshop scheduled next Wednesday. I think that is September 24th. That one goes from 4 to 6 in the afternoon. Do we know? Anyway, this afternoon we are going to start with information technology. They were going to be the last group that goes, but we figured that we would get them on before we get into public works and community development. So with that, Ron Tiedeman, our IT director, information and innovation and technology director.
Hello. So today on page 415 is where our budget actually begins with our organization chart. We have 16 staff. Previously, you'll notice a slight typo in our department overview. Previously, multimedia was within the department. There's a sentence in there. Multimedia is now under administration, so I just wanted to point that out in the very beginning. Essentially, the IT department, going through the mission statement, our mission is to support technology within the city as best we can and suggest improvements where possible and work with a multitude of users to support their needs. Some of the accomplishments in 2013 and 14 include mostly savings and economy within the systems that we currently use. Printers, service contract changes, a majority of our software maintenance. We've reduced some of the services, combined some of the services. So for the most part, we have been fairly successful in consolidating those services. 15, 16 objectives for us. We're looking at a lot of the mayor's priorities moving into the 15, 16, even currently this year. Citizen engagement, citizen involvement, economic development, which is always a part of what we're doing with franchise agreements, bringing services into the city and trying to expand them beyond the city. So those continue to operate, and we continue to try to involve ourselves in regional activities and grant opportunities. Yes, sir.
I don't see mention of social media as an opportunity for your department. I don't see it here.
That's under communications.
It's under communications.
Multimedia, yes.
So you have a big role in it, of course.
Our role is on the back end to make sure that we are meeting archiving standards, meeting the necessary technology to make those things happen. Multimedia is managing the outreach and a lot of the pages that you're moving on, page 418, we talked about some of our performance metrics. A lot of those are going to be changing in the coming years. Customer service, we have a very aggressive service level agreement, responding within 30 minutes. Our GIS, EGIS portion of IT, we are continuously expanding that. Some of those projects were involved in the award that our department and the City of Auburn won as part of a digital cities application process that we went through. And then our enterprise services, which result in how long the network is up and how reliable it is. So those continue to increase in the new years. 15, 16, we look to change some of those metrics up a little bit and provide a little more measurable criteria to look at. Moving into...
Ron, I see a lot of growth in the GIS, and I know the tribe does a fair amount of GIS work. What cooperation do you have with them?
We have IT itself. I have actually been to a couple of the MIT their workshops. I've been to a couple of those meetings. I have talked with some of their council members about some of the things that they have been doing. There hasn't been a lot of cooperation or transfer of information, I should say. The new police substation, I think, has opened that door a little bit, and the communication continues. So I think as the years go by, there's definitely a synergy between what the two of us are doing and how we could help each other.
When it's a growth issue like this, you know, on your chart, you've got to look for all the connections we can.
Absolutely, absolutely. Page 419 gets into budget actuals, working capital. I think the easiest way for me to kind of fast track this is to say IT's budget in 15-16 is down by about 7%, so it is actually decreased. You will notice looking through some of the line items in here that we get, it fluctuates. We've saved money in some line items, and then we've had to increase other line items that have actually balanced themselves out, still savings. In 15-16, our biggest complications, or the biggest projects we're going to see are going to be increases and changes in how software is supported by various companies. We have 6 or 7 applications that are cloud supported now, but we have Microsoft, CAD, engineering software, a couple others. They've changed their licensing types, so they're actually costing the city more. And you will see some of the budget items, the individual line items have gone up to accommodate that, but at the end of the day, we're 7% below where we were the year before. So we're staying below outside of our decision packages. And I don't know if there is specific questions outside on the operating side of things. Is there specific questions there?
Well, I don't know if this is operating or not, but I see you have $20,000 for training for 16 people, which seems light to me in your kind of business. Does some of the training that people get come without cost to us? Like if you get a new software package and vendor supplies it, is that why I only see $20,000 for
That is
training?
absolutely correct,
Okay.
yes. A lot of times, some of the bigger applications that we have, training is provided free. Last year, we actually hosted Laserfish training here at the city, and they included some of our staff for free. Last year, we sent 5 of our staff to training. I sat on an advisory committee for some IT. So, you know, it is a combination. Normally, that would be a pretty small number. With that being said, I mean, we can always come back to any other questions, but if it's okay with everybody, I'd move into the decision packages and have a conversation about those real quick, if that's okay. Mm-hmm. So, starting on page 437. Now, these decision packages are included in the preliminary budget. The number one item is the request for a dedicated IT support lead over at the police department. Due to the technology and the various needs and the priorities and the fact that it's public safety, this is actually a primary need for the department. So that was number one on our list, and through the processes, the idea was to keep this person at the police department as much as possible, but of course our other staff would still have the capability to back them up in the event that they went on vacation or they were gone or we had some kind of an emergency.
Will IT have an office at the APD?
Yes, APD has, through our conversations, graciously opened space and created room for them to actually operate. They would still report to our office. The way we're looking at it would be structured under REBA staff, technical staff, but they would actually have an office there.
I guess I've got one question. So you're wanting to add one staff member. If we were to eliminate some of the contracts with surrounding cities, would you still need that one staff?
Yes, when we get into that conversation, so our contracts with the other agencies are bringing in about $150,000 in revenue to the city. Their impact based on our call numbers, their impact overall is 10%. So 90% of it is the city of Auburn, 10% of it is those other agencies. So even getting rid of those 500 tickets a year or 1,000 tickets a year really does not have any impact on the amount of services we're able to provide to the rest of the city or so the revenue and the impact, we did evaluate that, and it really doesn't help us except we lose that revenue. The second decision package is on 438, and that is referring to battery backup, disaster recovery. The idea here is the city obviously has some critical information. We do back up and store our data off-site. However, in the event of a real emergency, we do not have a warm site or a hot site where if there's an emergency and offices are shut down, we can just drive to a new location and start using our systems again. A combination of hardware, cloud services, and software. This proposal is to give us a location in Federal Way, who we currently have an agreement with, to store our information and replicate information back and forth in the event of an emergency. So our downtime would be cut down drastically, and it would go maybe an hour to get there versus 8 hours to set everything up and try to get it functional again. Starting with financials, of course, because that's the most important department in the city.
Of course.
Okay. Page 439 is a big one for the city. We have been working in this direction for the last year and a half. However, there are certain pieces of it to involve the citizens, website redesign, make things easier to reach out to the citizens, but also for them to reach back to us. Some of those things include capability to comment on items from home, capability to search data that is public information, and giving those tools to the public to actually manipulate as they may want to, but also take the resources off of us to try and search and research that. So there are multiple applications we have looked at. There's a couple of them that are available right now to us. This particular decision package would allow us to consolidate a majority of these items, meeting efficiency, citizen interaction, getting the word out, giving the mayor and the rest of council opportunity to receive and have interaction with the public, post ideas on the website, vote on ideas. I mean, that there is a lot of good technology out there to get that interaction and to fulfill some of those things that the mayor has identified as priorities in the city and things that the citizens have asked for, which will actually help our staff by allowing this technology at the residents' fingers so we can concentrate on other things as well. Yes?
There must be a lot of other cities that are moving into this area of easier access for citizens to us. What I'm interested in is once people start flooding you with all these data and requests and so on, who are the human beings that deal with that, and what is the cost of the staff to do that? And I don't think we can very well estimate, other than go and see what some other city of our similar size might be doing. Okay, have you done that to kind of get some staff impact feeling?
We have a ton of information related to that, and a majority of the staff time is occurring right now under the current method that we're doing it. So by automating these processes through these different applications, we are actually taking the work away. So instead of a public records request is submitted, staff then takes it, transfers it to another department, and then another department searches it, and there's this 8-hour process behind it. Even if we can cut half of those things down by allowing them to search online, then we have just cut 4 hours off of staff. And so, I mean, it is a process that by doing it in a phased approach, we can handle it. If we decided tomorrow that we wanted to implement all of this on the same day, then that would be difficult. But that has not been the plan so far.
Is your Gov involved in this at all?
Well,
This part?
that is a question that has been brought up multiple times. YourGov is a free application to us as a part of another application that we have. Some of what we're talking about here, there are opportunities for other applications to achieve the same end result, which is to get the information from the public. YourGov, we are unsure right now whether that is going to be improved upon beyond where it is, or maybe there is another option. So factoring all of this, I did take that into account, and that could be an option as a part of this as well.
Ron, can you explain boards and commissions management?
That boards and commissions management is the ability for the clerks to more efficiently operate and manage meetings and get those meeting notes out, cut down on printing, electronic, allowing you guys to use your technology that you currently have to view meetings and do more electronically. It's a big topic, and it has to do with meeting efficiency.
Right, on the bullet point about e-comment,
Yes.
is that going to be just for council meetings, or is that going to be for all of our meetings, committee meetings, and other meetings that are held?
Well, right now, that is a product that is available. How that is determined is really, that would be a conversation for the mayor and council to have, how that would factor out, how you would want to do it.
And then the same thing on the vote cast, is that also kind of the same circumstance on that, on how people?
Absolutely.
Because typically it would only be if we move away from committee approach to a workshop approach, the only voting then would take place at a council meeting.
If you go to page 441, this next decision package is reference ITS video system replacement. Our current software is not quite what our engineering division needs, and there is also a need to separate the interaction between traffic engineering and city staff. So this is a separation of those applications, and hopefully getting a system that is specific to traffic engineering.
Well, when we put those cameras in, we kind of made the policy decision we were going to have a short archive so that it didn't become a personal injury lawyer's data bank. And that was almost more policy than function. Are we going to revisit that, or have you thought about it?
We have started having conversations about that, and yes, I would say that we are going to revisit that. I believe there's about 40 plus traffic cameras right now, and there is close to 120 city-owned cameras out and about. So that is definitely a conversation, because the more storage, the more time, the more money, the more opportunity to, it's a
I mean, we have to archive certain amounts of that for our own planning and traffic engineering and so on, but we don't have to create a data bank for personal injury lawyers. So we need to rethink that in light of this new approach.
Absolutely. Final decision package, page 442, is public safety RMS upgrade and implementation of an archiving solution that is a part of that upgrade. Unfortunately, the equipment is end of life and it's under a replacement, or it needs to be replaced due to the support on those particular devices. So this, unfortunately, is one of those expensive upgrades that includes hardware and software maintenance and enhancements to their current system. It is mission critical, so there's some cost in how we do it, so it's just kind of a necessary replacement.
Your comment then on the description of the improvement of the end of life exceeding 7 years in operation, is the life cycle approximately 7 years? Or because technology can be shorter?
In the life cycle rotation that we have set up and worked out with the industry standard, a server is typically end of life after 5 years. So we are definitely beyond that. We've stretched it as much as we could, and now we are facing a situation where if it breaks, we might have a hard time finding parts or people to help us fix it.
Have we ever looked at the leasing of this equipment over a period of time? I know that we've gone away from leasing with printers because it's cheaper to buy, but how about leasing of this type of equipment over the long run as being a cheaper way of going?
In some instances, in my past experience, we have looked at it. Since I have been here, we have not, and that's certainly something we can visit. On the server side of things, when we're talking about specialized equipment and applications, this particular one does not fall under a lease opportunity because there's a specialty behind it, but lots of organizations do look at leasing computers for desktop use. So that is definitely something we can look into.
Have you ever looked at using off-site or out-of-state services for picking up the slack?
We are constantly looking at different opportunities, and that is one of those opportunities. Our staff is well trained at looking at every possibility before we bring a recommendation to the mayor or council, and that's definitely one of those things.
That's a question on the checklist, right?
I guess just a thought off the top of my head right now is, have we ever thought about consolidating some of this with other surrounding cities so that you have one basic system that works for the police force, like for Kent, and then one for Auburn, use the same equipment for both cities?
That is a loaded question because in the history of law enforcement, every agency talks about doing that, and very few of them are capable of doing it. In our particular instance, one of the things this system, we will get some return on our investment on it because of our partners. Currently, Pacific, Algona, and Black Diamond is also asking us, but we are sharing our current police department applications with two of those agencies. There has been discussion at a regional level to look at those options, but because everybody uses different things and have different expectations, it's very difficult to
So in fact, we are already doing it, and will we with this new equipment also do it with this equipment, and then they will also provide payments to
Yes.
help offset some of this cost?
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. If there's no other questions, I'm out.
Okay, you're done?
I got a question back here
On
all
the-
the time.
On the detail?
Yeah. I noticed you're going up quite a bit on overtime because of,
What page?
I'm trying to find it.
Oh,
I saw it earlier. Page 421, I think it is. It's overtime. It went from 10,000 last year up to 25,999.
That actually is kind of a misnomer because what ended up happening is we put our on-call staff on an on-call rotation similar to what the rest of the city is doing. So they get paid, we have a rotation, they get paid. That was the difference of what that cost to have them carry their cell phone through a 24-hour rotation. So it's not really overtime. It wasn't factored in until this next year.
Okay.
It's standby, on call.
Thank you. Thank you.
Before you leave, I did have a question. On 439, my council member Wagner asked about the cost, and is the one IT person going to facilitate all of these benefits? Is one person going to be in charge of getting all the information on this, or is this going to be divided between?
On page 439
Yeah,
for
where
the
it says
citizens.
benefits would include, and you've got all these different items
Those
on
would be
there
benefits throughout the city.
throughout the city. Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't clear on that, so I just wanted to.
Yeah, it would be citywide.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Okay, great, thank you.
Now where are we going?
We are going to Director Snyder. Which one you started with?
This is
Right on.
standard.
Big book or little book?
We're going to go a little bit.
Little book. Little book. First section. Under.
I know.
Slow it down.
Starting with public works.
What page?
So we're going to start on page 84 of the little book. And, well, good afternoon, Mayor and City Council. We do it a little bit different than the other departments just for several factors. One, you will see to my right, your left, I have asked members of my leadership team to be here and help in the presentation. As you're well aware, we are a newly combined department. We are finishing up officially month 9 of our combination of previously the planning and public work departments. And I just want to take a quick moment to thank the folks sitting over there. One of them is actually on a well-deserved vacation. Jeff Tate is not with us today, but Elizabeth is standing in his stead. And we have had an opportunity over the last 9 months to really do a lot of amazing good work. The mayor and the council entrusted us with bringing forward this new department, and I really want to take my hats off to the people sitting over there, all of them who have worked very hard to realize the vision that the mayor and the council set up for this new department. We're not without our challenges. That would be crazy for me to say that everything is perfect, but I have the extreme pleasure and honor of working with people every day who are very interested in doing the right thing and bringing forward this new department in a great way that benefits you as well as the citizens of Auburn. So starting on page 84, quick overview, organization. Again, we are Community Development and Public Works. We in 2015, we will be a department of 150, and in 2016, a department of 149. The difference being we have a supernumerary position that is funded through 2015, but is not yet funded for 2016. We have 5 core service areas, that being administration, environmental services programs, and that's headed by Chris Anderson. We also have engineering services, headed by City Engineer Ingrid Gallup, and she's also Assistant Director. We have Community Development Services, headed by Assistant Director Jeff Tate. And finally, we have Maintenance and Operations Services, headed by Assistant Director Randy Bailey. And again, we are a large department. We provide services across a broad spectrum, ranging from building permits to street maintenance to engineering services, managing a very large capital program, which we'll talk about a little bit later, to business license services, to code enforcement, to land use planning, both short-term and long-term. There's been a lot of conversation about economic development by the council over your last meetings. Our department, in just about every single way, touches economic development. And we're very proud to take a very prominent but collaborative role in bringing forward the city's economic development. So, our department is large and diverse. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go a little bit out of order. You'll see second to last bullet is level of service principles. I'm going to talk about those briefly, and then I'm going to ask my leadership team to kind of overview some of the key accomplishments and goals that they have. So, Tamara, if you could move forward. So, one of the things that we did early on that we felt was really important, as being a new and large department, we really wanted to identify levels of service, goals, and expectations for ourselves. So we felt it was important that we have this because we are bringing together two departments that in the past have worked with different goals and different expectations, sometimes shared, sometimes not. But we are now one department, and we need to have a commonality of principle and a commonality of focus around level of service. So I'm just going to quickly overview these level of service principles, and they'll feed back into the goals and accomplishments and some of the other conversations we're going to have with you. So first and foremost, we want to provide the opportunity for each service area to develop its own level of service definition, the metrics for evaluating service performance, and how and if services will be provided. The basic point here is that there is no one common definition for level of service in our department. We are too big, we are too broad, and so we want to make sure that each service area has the ability and the opportunity to create that, working in concert and with the council's expectations and the mayor's goals and objectives. So we do take those very strongly into account when we're talking about level of service. We want to create clear understandings between city administration, city council, other departments, and department management on the types of services to be delivered, reasonable timeframes for delivery of services, and prioritization of service delivery as applicable. The main point here is that, again, being a large and diverse department, we have lots of clients, both internal and external. And our internal clients, we want to make sure that we have very clear lines of communication and understandings so that when we deliver service, we're delivering it in a way that people expect within the time frames reasonably that we can provide them, and hopefully meeting or exceeding their goals, if you could. The next principle is we want to focus on the quality of service delivery, not the quantity of service delivery. One of the challenges in our department is that we have a lot of timelines associated with the work, both mandated and self-imposed. And while we want to work very hard to meet those expectations of the quantity side, we really want to make sure that the quality of the service that we're providing is exceptional and delivers on the goals that we have set for ourselves and the goals that the city has set for itself. We want to establish and maintain reasonable service delivery timeframes that balance internal and external customer service needs and expectations with staff resources and workloads. This is the simple balancing that we need to do. We have lots of demands upon our time. We have lots of expectations thrown at us, both internally and externally, and we have resources and workloads that we need to balance that. So we want to continually communicate with mayor, council, our internal clients and our external clients about how reasonably can we deliver the service. It is not to anyone's benefit if we are not able to deliver service that is of quality because we are rushing to get it done. So our goal is to deliver high quality service in reasonable timeframes. Our next principle is we want to align the delivery of services with staffing, budget, equipment, and other resources. This relates to the previous bullet. We want to make sure that we are able to deliver the services in the way and the manner that we say, in the timeframes that we commit to, and that we're not doing it in a way that overtaxes our resources. Finally, or the last bullet on this page, is we want to maintain employee morale and work-life balance by establishing clear and reasonable expectations for the delivery of services. Our best and most important resource is our staff. They make us as managers look good, they make the mayor and the city council look good, and we have to work very hard to make sure that they have their morale is high and they have adequate work-life balance, not like any other department, because we want to make sure that they want to stay here and grow with us and continue to be excellent representatives and stewards of the city. So we work very hard. We have lots of conversations among the leadership team about how to do that, because when we lose an employee, it hurts. It not only hurts in terms of the immediate staffing issue, it hurts in trying to backfill that institutional knowledge and also the service delivery relationships that that person has established both internally and externally. And then the last two principles we have is we want to work with our department team members across all service areas to explore and implement innovative service delivery opportunities to improve service delivery efficiencies and experiences. One of the things we're spending a lot of time talking right now at the leadership team is how to be more innovative. And that's not different from any other department or what the mayor and council are talking about. Innovation is the word du jour in local government right now, and it's something that we want to look at because we believe that working with mayor, council, other departments in the community, we can find ways to be much more innovative that results in cost savings and continued high service delivery. And then finally, we want to educate and communicate to city administration, city council, our internal and external customers in the community on the services to be delivered, service delivery timeframes, service delivery results, and the balancing of services and resources. One of the things that we want to work very hard on over the next 2 years is really improving our communication with all the different parties that we work with and making sure that they really understand what we do, how we do it, why we do it, and the way that we're delivering the service. And it's really important to do that because I think one of the fair criticisms we have lobbied at ourselves, both on all sides of the service areas, is we have not been as good at communicators as we needed to be and should be. So that's a goal that we have and a principle that we have very much on our mind continuously. So with that, I'm going to ask that my leadership team talk to you a little bit about the highlights of their different areas and also the goals and accomplishments and goals that they've set out. I'm going to just stand in for Jeff Tate today because, again, he's on vacation. And very, very briefly...
Kevin, before you leave
yes.
the general things you just did, we had a vision for the city for a long time that is still on the webpage, by the way, not the new one.
Yes.
I expected to see something here in your overall view about but promoting the new vision. What about it?
Fair point. I've been working with the mayor's office. That's something, depending on where we land today, that actually at the next budget meeting, we actually wanted to bring that forward and have that conversation with you. Mayor and I have been talking about that, how to bring that back into this budget process. Because it's something that we, obviously the council spent a lot of time in your retreat working on that. You have a desire to bring that forward. So that's one of the conversations we want to have with you is how do you want to bring that forward in the budget document and more broadly out into the community. So, Mayor, if I said that correctly?
Yes.
Okay. So it's to be discussed, I guess is the best way to say it. And honestly, although it could be in my area, it's your conversation. We're there to assist between you and the mayor. Okay, so very, very briefly, in terms of the highlights, we obviously, as I already talked about, we've combined the department. We have in terms of significant budgetary changes, and Shelley's already talked about it in previous budget meetings. We have some issues with our bank card charges that we are working on for ways to modify how those charges are hitting us. So I won't spend a lot of time on that because you've already heard about that. But I did also want to, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk highlights for community development and then also the accomplishments and the goals, and then I'm going to ask each of the folks at the table to talk as well. So in the community development arena, in addition to the highlights, your binder has a long list of 2013-14 accomplishments. I'm going to hit on a couple that I think are really key. One is that, and you're well aware of this, that the city has been engaging in a citywide visioning process, Imagine Auburn, as a precursor to the update of the comprehensive plan, and we're now taking that information and bringing that forward. That was, I think, a very successful engagement with our community. We had lots of different forums, some smallly attended, but great conversations, some largely attended. I think several of you attended one or more of them. And we got a lot of feedback, a lot of diverse feedback from our community in terms of what their vision for the community is over the next 20 years. So it's something that we're very proud of. In 2014, that also was our years of permit processing. In those 2 years, we assisted in the permitting renovations and openings of Auburn High School, the TREP multifamily development, 2 new buildings at Green River Community College, 7 new warehouse manufacturing facilities, the redevelopment and the tending of the outlet collection, Orion Aerospace, and the HCSA laundry facility. And that's just to name a few. Those are kind of the highlights. A couple of just things I want to point out to you. Outlet collection was really interesting. We had 280 different permits we needed to coordinate on that. And we did 1,200 inspections with no delays. And that's with 2 inspectors. So we have a high-performing team. With Trek, our team was able to, in 37 days, approve the building and civil plans for that development. You can barely process a SEPA application in 37 days, so the fact that we were able to do that, again, these were in the guise of customer service and being economic development friendly. The final thing I want to point out is that we also have we have had easily 20,000 or more customer service interactions over the last few years at the permit center counter, over the phone, via email, sending letters. We do a lot of customer service engagement, and not different from any other department in here, but we tend to see a lot of folks coming across our table, and it's an honor and privilege to serve them. We don't always deliver the message they want to hear, but we try to problem solve where we can, and if we have to say no, we try to find alternates if we can for them. So I'm extremely proud of the customer service that our department provides, working in concert in many instances with other departments. We're very much engaged with Shelley in the finance utility customer service counter. There's a great partnership there. We have public works staff. We also share the counter with community services staff managed by Director Hirsch. We do a lot of customer service at our counter and in person and through other mediums. Finally, on the goals, we have a number of goals, and they're highlighted in the book, but 2 I want to highlight. We want to, in the development review area, we want to continually look to balance. We have spent a lot of energy sharpening our tools around being fast and efficient. We want to improve in the area of making sure that we are delivering the best return to our citizens, both through that process and at the end of that process. So we'll be taking time to make sure that we are thinking about the long-term nature of our decision-making. So when we are putting in, for example, concrete and roadways, concrete has a 30-year lifespan, we want to make sure that we're thinking about those things. And to be honest with you, we haven't always put those at the forefront because we are trying to do a lot of other things. But that's a goal that the team has, is to really be more holistic in our development review activities. The other area is code enforcement. You have, in a few minutes, we'll talk about program improvements. We have 2 code enforcement officers. They do an amazing job. But 2 people for a city of 75,000, 29 square miles, they average about 1,000 cases a year between them. And for a number of months, we were down to 1 code enforcement officer. We want to take code enforcement, if the council is supportive, to the next level. We want to move from reactive to proactive, and we want to be able to engage with our citizenry in areas of education more directly, areas of advocacy. We want to make sure that those people that really need help are getting the advocacy, because we don't always have the solutions. Sometimes we need to go get other people to help us. We want to advocate for them. And then finally, where we have to, or we can't, those other education or advocacy is not working, then we'll go down the compliance route. But we have an opportunity, if we do have the addition of a 3rd person and some additional financial support, to really change the nature of how we do code enforcement. Yes, sir.
How do you measure department goals? Can you give me a couple of...
That's a good question, Counselor, and I'm going to give you an honest answer. We're working on it. We're a new department. In the past, we would have measured it differently because we were different departments. We're trying to find ways to build a new portfolio of measurement. You'll see in your budget book that we relied upon past performance measures because we needed to. That's 2013 and 14 when we were still 2 separate departments. So my team and I are going to be working to deliver that, and I hope to come back to you in the near future with clarity on that.
If you get a citizen inquiry, what do you think is a reasonable response time?
It depends on the area, but we generally try to get back to folks within 24 hours. And it depends on the method of contact. But our goal department-wide is to try to return, whether it's through voicemail, phone, email, or reporting through Cartograph, YourGov, some of the various mediums that we have for getting input. We try to get back in 24 hours. Sometimes we have to go out and do pre-investigation before we can contact because we don't have enough information, but the goal is around 24 hours. So are there any questions before I turn it over to my team?
I have I have a couple of questions on page 86 on objectives. You want to go through their presentation first? And
Counselor, it's your, I'll leave it up to you what you would prefer.
well, let me just do a couple here. One is on the bullet point with the working with City Council on climate action planning and policy development.
Yes.
And just curious as to what you may be able to outline for us of what does that look like? What does it involve?
I'm going to ask Chris Anderson, our Environmental Services Manager, to respond to that.
I'm going to stand up because then I can see the boss, and if he gives me that look, I'll know why he said that. I have to apologize, council member. I was fiddling with the electronics over here and didn't hear the question.
So my question was on the bullet point regarding the working with City Council on climate action planning and policy development. And the curiosity there is kind of outlining your brief and what does that involve and what does that look like?
That's something we're going to talk about under program improvements as well. But very briefly, the city has undertaken several policy measures to move towards greenhouse gas reductions and climate action planning. And most recently, in 2010, completed a greenhouse gas inventory based on 2008 data and positioned itself for the next step, which is to move forward with setting emissions reductions targets and an actual emissions reductions plan to achieve those targets. And there is actually a program improvement as part of this budget proposal that would move the city forward in that area.
And if I could add, Councilor, one of the things that's becoming more and more a need for us is that a lot of the grants that we go after, they are expecting to see a climate action plan or some measures to reduce impacts to greenhouse gas or carbon impacts, carbon-related impacts. So it's something that, as Chris said, we started in 2010. We did do a greenhouse gas inventory of both municipal operations. We did I would say, a very cursory community survey because we did not have the resources at that time to do a community-wide. So we have a goal of updating that information and then talking with council about policy ideas around that. Again, we do have a vested interest at the staff level because many of our granting agencies are expecting to see that now. And we do not necessarily get scoring if we do not, or we're not able to show that we are moving in that direction.
One other question, just real quickly, on the flood insurance program community rating system. And I know we do not, as a city, certify the levies, like the Reddington levy. However, does the community rating system have an impact on the flood insurance rates for the various zones?
It does. I'm going to have Chris just give a brief explanation of that, too.
So the city's rating in the community rating system has a direct connection to the premiums that flood insurance policyholders pay. And very, very quickly, it's a 10-point rating system. The city's currently a 5. And for every point, there's a 5% reduction that policyholders in flood hazard areas pay. So currently the policyholders for properties within the city flood hazard areas are receiving a 25% discount on flood insurance premiums.
Any other questions before we move on? One thing I do want to note, just for clarity purposes, the budget itself does not fully reflect the organizational framework of the city yet. We'll be working with Director Coleman and her team in the off-budget year to look at how to bring that more current. So, for example, although Environmental Services is now a standalone program area, it's the cost centers for that are still embedded in the community development line items. And so we're going to be talking with Shelley and her team just to see how we can better represent the organizational structure in future budgets. But for purposes of planning and where we're at, we did not do that for this budget. So if you are quizzical about why, for example, you see environmental stuff in community development services, that's why, because we're working towards that goal on an off-budget cycle and need guidance and counsel from Shelley and her team on that. So with that, I'm going to ask Chris Anderson to stand up one more time because he's on deck again and give you just a brief overview on the environmental accomplishments and goals.
Thank you, Kevin. Good afternoon, members of the City Council. Director Snyder, point of clarification. Do we just want to talk about accomplishments and objectives at this time, and we'll come back through the program improvements?
Yes.
So just very briefly, an overview of the environmental services service area in the new department structure. Previously part of community development division, and with the reorg, it's one of those 5 service areas. Staffing for environmental services is 2 full-time employees, myself, and then an environmental planner position, which up until recently was staffed by Jamie Kelly, and he's transitioned within the city. So we do have that vacancy currently.
Internally, we use the term stole.
It's all part of the plan.
We're just happy that it's an employee that stayed with the city and it's developing a broader reach.
Yes.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Nice to say.
Thank you.
Wanted to just provide a quick overview for environmental services. So environmental services is involved in both capital and non-capital activities. So examples of capital activities would be development of the Auburn Environmental Park boardwalk and the Fenster levee setback projects and the Mill Creek Wetland 5K projects. Those are all kind of in the capital arena for environmental services. In the non-capital arena, and it's quite a varied list actually, it's a broad range of activities including monitoring and maintenance of the AEP, various floodplain issues such as CRS and the National Flood Insurance Program compliance, the Endangered Species Biological Opinion that was implemented several years ago, floodplain mapping. So quite a range of activities with respect to floodplains. Environmental services is involved in regional watershed and salmon recovery planning, heavily involved with the Ryan 9 Ecosystem Forum, the Puyallup River Watershed Council, and attending and participating in those regional activities. We get involved in general environmental and public involvement events, things like the Earth Day event that we did help facilitate this year, the environmental components of Clean Sweep in past years, general river restoration projects like the White River buffer plantings and things like that. A big part of what we have done in the past is assisting both other activities within our now combined department, but other departments with environmental issues, ranging from monitoring stormwater at the airport to assisting the legal department with environmental related legal issues, property acquisitions, assisting with contaminated sites, and in at least one notable case, city's response to a contaminated site, and those kinds of activities. And then lastly, on my short list here, we do get involved in providing technical assistance to property owners, homeowners associations, things like folks have questions about trees and how to deal with hazard trees that might be in a wetland buffer or a wetland that they may be concerned about, slopes on their property, slopes above their property. So we end up getting involved in quite a bit of technical assistance and helping steer them into the, if they're pursuing a project, into the development application process if that's appropriate for them. Many times we can address their issue or concern without the need for a permit, and in fact we've worked on kind of developing a set of exemptions that we can literally issue an exemption letter so that somebody does not have to go through a full critical area review process to deal with a hazard tree that's near their house. And then just very quickly on funding sources for environmental services, there are 4 general funds, if you will, that we work with environmental services. Certainly the departmental operating fund, the Fund 124, which is a wetland mitigation fund that private development proponents with wetland impacts have paid into. And then we also do work with Parks Fund 321 and Non-Departmental Fund 328. With respect to some of our capital projects, those end up involving at various points a couple of the enterprise funds. or I guess one at this point, and that's principally been the storm fund, which provided in recent years a total of just a little over $1.25 million for the Wetland 5K project and the Fenster levee setback project. And then the kind of the third category of funds that the Environmental Services works with are grants, and we actually have at this time grants from federal, state, and local grantors. Those total right at $2.25 million currently, and those are principally Mill Creek, Fenster, and the Blowing Plume area-wide redevelopment planning projects that involve those grants. So I promise I'll be very quick on the accomplishments and the objectives. Since it wasn't listed in your book, I wanted to talk about two accomplishments. The first was the Fenster levee setback project, which, while not complete, we anticipate will be complete by the time the budget is adopted. And it just, again, we were able to leverage a relatively small amount of city funds, $35,000, at a ratio of 37 to 1 to accomplish that $1.3 million project. So I consider that a major accomplishment in the current biennium period. And then secondly, working in coordination with the Army Corps of Engineers, we've been able to finalize the design of the Mill Creek Wetland 5K project, execute an agreement with the Army Corps for construction of that project, acquire the necessary real estate interests, and have those certified by the Corps. And now, moving forward in actually before the end of the year, we anticipate that the construction contract will be awarded and moving forward. So, two major, in this case, capital environmental projects that I think are of note in the current biennium. And then going forward with major objectives, we'll come back and I think talk more about those as we talk about some of the program improvements. But first is to develop, monitor, and maintain the Auburn Environmental Park and other city environmental assets. Going forward, one of the principal focuses of environmental services is going to be this idea of monitor and managing the city's environmental assets. The city literally has interests, either fee simple real estate interests or beneficial easement interests in hundreds of properties that are either dedicated to or restricted to environmental purposes. And so big properties like the environmental park I think are pretty well known among this body, but there are also multiple smaller sites, mitigation sites, grant-funded restoration sites, conservation easement interests, native growth protection areas that have been dedicated to the city over the years, and really looking to get a programmatic approach in place to be able to have a current inventory of those, have those on a current management schedule so that they're routinely being assessed for any work or issues that may be needing to be addressed with those. So that would be first. And then the second area I would highlight under major objectives is, to the council member's question, to work with council on climate action planning and policy development, and briefly to move through that process, which at this point would involve updating the inventory, the greenhouse gas emissions inventory, and then moving forward with developing emissions reductions targets and assembling a plan to achieve those targets. So with that, I think that kind of caps off my two accomplishments and my two objectives. So I'll turn it over to Ingrid. Ingrid?
Hi, and I'm going to actually be seated for this so that I can see everything that I need to. So really quick, we're going to go to page 103 in the small book, and that's actually where all the public works stuff starts. As Kevin mentioned earlier, this is kind of a little bit of a remnant of how the budget work used to be done previously, in that the goals and accomplishments that you see listed here are really for the department-wide, and not necessarily just the engineering budget portion of the department. So I'm only going to touch on a couple of these items right now, and then in interest of keeping you guys in the small book before jumping to the big book and making you go back and forth, Randy's going to talk about streets next, and then we'll jump to the enterprise and the special revenue funds that are in the big book. So really quick, just a quick overview. Engineering services, we have about 8 different budgets that we actually work within. One of those you actually already heard about, the 328 fund. And then we have our engineering budget, and then we have the special revenue budgets for 102, 103, 105. Those are our various street funds. And then the utility budgets, the 430, 431, and 432. So for accomplishments and goals in 13 and 14 for just the general engineering side, we actually accomplished completing the removal of all the temporary levees related to the Howard Hanson Dam project. So that was a fairly large accomplishment for the department. And then we also worked with King County Flood Control District on completing the land swap that was necessary for the Reddington Levee project to go forward. So that was also a fairly big accomplishment in 13-14 on that general engineering side. Our goals going forward overall for the engineering side, we have a plan to continue to really pursue both state and regional levels for new revenue sources for our arterial street preservation. That's a big focus for us because we're really needing that funding. As well as we have a significant project to complete all of our comprehensive plan updates for all our transportation, our water, our sewer, and our storm drainage systems. So with that, unless there's other questions on the general side, we'll jump into more specific stuff on water and transportation when we go into the big.
I had one question, just at the bottom bullet point, and this may be a question for Chief Lee, but you talk about the prevention of wire theft. I'm just curious as to what we're experiencing, how much theft is there, and is it a big problem or just a problem?
So that was a bigger problem than what it has been right now. Several years ago in 2013, we went around and we actually welded shut most of our boxes around the city to try to prevent that. And then in working with PD, we also monitor pretty heavily and try to catch instances where we see it. So there's been some public notification that we've done in 2013 to try to get the public to be aware if they see somebody suspicious that looks like maybe they shouldn't be there, to give us a call so that we can try to catch them in that act. I don't know that we've had as significant amount of theft in the last year as what we've had previously. Any other questions before we jump to streets?
Good afternoon. So we're going to talk a little bit about the street division, some of the things that they do, some of the priorities that we currently do. Excuse me. So currently the division has, in the street division itself, we've got 8 full-time staff that are in the field for the street division. We also have another 2 additional staff that are funded out of the street division that work in the vegetation management. Those 8 staff take care of the street lights, signs, some of the striping, pavement work, garbage cleanup, guardrail repair, and kind of just everything else that doesn't fit into another category also goes to those guys. Because as you know, when you get into the enterprise groups, their work has to be significantly towards that enterprise fund. So anything that doesn't fit within an enterprise fund that's maintenance and operations gets thrown to the street division, because that's just where it fits. So, sorry. When Kevin was talking about our priorities, as we look through those things over the last few years, we've got into doing a lot of things to make things happen quickly for the public, which is always a good thing. But the one
ramification that we found from that we didn't think about is when we're trying to do those things quickly, like our pothole response, our graffiti response, some of those things where we've got a self-imposed 24-hour response to those things, is what we've created with our street division is a reactionary force. Because with only 8 people to do those things, you pull 4 of that crew out to be on that 24-hour response, or that 24-hour response to the issue. You can't schedule them to do any projects other than just do that stuff. So what we've been talking about as we're moving forward and working with the mayor is looking at some of those priorities and being able to try and build some programmatic approaches to those things. And not that we're talking about stretching them out significantly, but instead of like a 24-hour response, we may go to 3 times a week instead of every day, or 2 times a week instead of every day. And what that allows us to do then is if we stretch those to 2 times a week, that gives us 3 days a week that we can actually plan significant projects where we can use all 8 people in that division. And we have this throughout all of our work areas, but we want to look at those things to try and make ourselves more efficient with the current staffing levels and then the amount of dollars that are available. So you're going to hear a lot about those things as we work forward, because those are things that we're not only going to have to put together a program that you believe in as being the governing body, but as well as that we can get out to the public and get them convinced with. One event that I think that a lot of people here know about is what we did with the sweeping program in this last year. We went through and we actually developed a program where we cut down the amount of sweepings that we did per month in each neighborhood. We went from 2 sweepings to 1 sweeping. But what we're able to do now is we can guarantee those people what day we're going to be in front of their house. And that was a big thing that the public comment that I received quite a bit is, you know, it's really nice that we get swept twice a month, but I go out and move my car and the sweeper doesn't show up. You know, what's up with that? So what we did is now we can tell you on this day we're going to be in front of your house. So we've got time built in for breakdowns, flat tires, those kinds of things built into the schedule so we can actually meet those schedules. And it's been very successful. My phone has been extremely quiet this year from sweeper complaints.
Is that on the website?
It is. Yes, it's all on the website. As well as there's mailings that are going out at the beginning of sweeping season that shows what your sweeping schedule is in your neighborhood. So it's a map of the entire city. You locate your zone and it tells you what days throughout the whole year that we're going to be there in front of your house.
And so are you going to add the new changes on there so that people will know how often they're going to be swept?
They're already on there. So when you go on there and you look at your zone, you look down below and it shows you each day of each month for the entire year that we're going to be there in front of your house. So, it seems to be working very well. Like I said, we're not receiving very many complaints. But we want to use that same type of philosophy and really try and think these things out as we look at some of the other tasks that we've developed that are important, but I don't know that they're important enough for us to do every day. So those are some of the efficiencies that we're trying to look at and trying to program in and build from there. So,
I have another question. On the when you have a complaint from a Latino family that they got graffiti on their fence and you folks left a note that says you have to have it done at a certain time, and if they don't, do you go back and citate them, or do you help them get the material? Because I had a family that didn't speak any English, and they said they've got several notes saying they had to paint it. So instead of them painting it because they didn't understand, they just changed their boards around.
Randy, you want me to? I think that's more of a code enforcement.
Okay.
So what we do with that situation is we set up a program. We recognize that in those instances, the people that have been impacted are the victims. So what we do is we do what we call a 10-day soft notice, where we just let them know that we understand you've been graffiti and we want to make sure that you're aware that the city does have regulations. We do have resources available. We do try to do that. We have tried to do that in some different languages previously, but it is in English. However, in those instances, if folks want to come and talk to us, either in person or on the phone, we do have translation services available to us. So we can actually call a number, and depending on the language, we can actually have an interpreter help us talk to them. So if you do have that situation with those individuals, please refer them to us, and we do have resources to help deal with them. And we do have ways to mitigate some of the impact, again, understanding that they've been victims.
Okay. Well, I did tell him, how to go about to getting the paint and clean it up and everything, but I told him not to turn it around, just go ahead and I'll help him out in the translating, and we'll get it taken care of.
Okay, great.
That's good to know that you do have a translator.
We do.
Okay.
So a couple of the accomplishments for the street division, we continue to maintain the streets in fairly good condition by crack sealing, increasing the life, and postponing the need for expensive overlays and rebuilds. We do as much as that as we can of the pothole repair. Crack sealing is extremely important. Also the use of some of the thin overlays and the chip seal helps significantly in those. We also do the pothole patrol program that I talked about a little bit. That's extremely important. We do get a lot of participation from the public. We get a lot of, as Council had pointed out earlier, on the YourGov. We get a lot of access from the citizens through YourGov that helps us find those, hopefully prior to a claim.
Randy, the 13 or 14 accomplishments next to the last bullet about worn and damaged street signs. Seems like I've noticed more of them lately that are hard to read. And yet you're saying here you've got a new way of evaluating that.
We do. It's a reflectometer, or a retroreflectometer, and basically what that does is it's sort of like a laser device that actually shoots a beam at the sign, shoots it back into the device, and reads what the reflection is off of that sign. So it calculates what the driver would see at night from that sign. We don't own one. They're fairly expensive. They're about $13,000 to buy one. But what we do is we get the free loaner from the state. We sign up for it, and in September normally, this year it's in October, but the last couple of years it's been September. We give that for about 3 weeks where we can actually use it.
But what I'm wondering is, does that cause you to leave them up there longer so that they work according to the technology, but they look shabby?
Correct. That's basically what we're finding out, because the ones that we look at and we suspect them being at the end of their life cycle, they're actually coming back through the reflectometer that they're still in good condition.
So I think we might want to think about whether that's the right approach, because we don't want to look shabby.
Well, and we don't want them to look shabby, but the thing that we have to balance in there is like we'll use a speed limit sign, for example. A speed limit sign is a $45 item, and we've got a lot of signs in this town, so if you just use that, if we go out and we get rid of them too soon, then we're wasting money. So we need to find that balance. I do agree that we need to look at the look of them as well as the reflectology of them, but we want to balance that.
And I suppose you have a hierarchy of which ones you fix. Like the one out there on Beasley Canyon says we're going to be an inclusive community. You can hardly read it anymore. Some of the street signs that tell you what street you're on, you can barely read them. Now, those things aren't so safety related, but they still make the community look shabby. And if your machine here is telling you they're okay, I don't think they're okay.
Well, it not only makes it look shabby, but it's a wayfinding for folks coming into town, don't know our town. I think you ought to put in the budget that piece of equipment and buy it. That's what I think. I mean, that way you've got 365 usage rather than 3 weeks.
Yeah, and we have put that in the budget in the past. And
what's happened to it?
It was about the 2008-ish time, so it was...
I think you ought to put it in the budget.
I do too.
But we do have, what we're gaining from the use of the one that we've got is it's twofold. With our cartograph program, our inventory program, it's the new cartograph that we have the ability now to have all of our signs, streetlights, all of that stuff are now in cartograph, or will be in cartograph. But what we're going to be able to do is, as we install that stuff, we're going to be able to go through and use the retroreflectometer to look at a sign and see what the visibility is of that. And so if it's a north-facing sign and it has a number of 10, which is perfect quality, we're going to be able to assume that all the rest of the signs of that type that were put in at that time facing that same direction are probably the same reflective quality. Sorry. But we need to understand that it depends on which way the signs are facing are going to change that reflective number.
While we're talking about signs, Puyallup starting to put in a lot of lighted street signs up on their signal arms. I mean, that really gives a high-quality view and an easy way to get around Puyallup. We don't have any, I don't think.
Right.
I would hope that we would do an analysis of which key streets we might want to do that on. We wouldn't want to do it on every cross arm and every signal, but I think it could improve our image a lot, because it makes me think differently about Puyallup when I say it.
And if I might jump in real fast, to that point, we've actually we've assembled an internal working team. There have been several conversations about the look and appearance of the community, both in the public areas and in the private areas. And we've started a working group from city administration, our department, and parks to talk about that. We're actually going to go out on a tour in a few weeks and tour around on major corridors around the community and talk about the public spaces and the private spaces and what are, because we all recognize there's some shabbiness, to use that term, around the town. So, in terms of the conversation about improving the look and appearance of the community, that is something that staff is interested in. We've talked with the mayor. She's given us the go-ahead to go ahead and expend some staff resources looking at that, so we can get a sense of what the issues are and what type of improvements we might want to bring forward to the council if we can't fit it in current budget at a later date. So we are looking at that.
I also wanted to talk about the radar safe community. We've got all those signs up that have been up for a number of years, and they are extremely shabby. I see no reason to have them up any longer. Now, I realize you only have a staff of 8, so getting them down would be a problem, but they are rather shabby. And by having too many signs at a particular intersection also creates a problem, and I think that's one of the problems that we have.
What signs?
Photo safe.
Photo safes on every intersection throughout the town. Now, if the speed limit sign is $45, what did those cost?
Well, not amazingly enough, but the photo enforced signs are not the same quality. They're not a retro-reflective sign. They're just a reflective sign. So basically, they only reflect back a portion of the light that hits them. A retro-reflective actually reflects back more light than that really actually hits it, which is part of what the quality is of those signs. That's why they're fading so fast, is because they're an engineering-grade style sign. But I would agree with your comment. There's been many, many studies that have been out about the over-density of signs and what the human mind can interpret at 25 miles an hour. And we have a lot of areas where there is no possible way that anybody can interpret all the signs that they're being bombarded with in a blind.
And not only that, it created a situation where most people thought we had cameras at every intersection, when in fact we didn't, which is contrary to what the state law was talking about originally.
Any other questions?
Yes. Does your department manage your gov?
We don't manage YourGov. What happens is when you put in a YourGov request, it comes into Cartograph, and then our front office staff at M&O, they're the first ones to view that. And then it gets assigned to whatever department can best help that customer.
And no follow-up?
Oh, yes, we do follow up on everything that comes through there. There's contact that goes back to that person on your. Well, let me back up. If somebody puts in the information that allows us to contact them, the majority of the information that comes through YourGov is anonymous. I would say 90% of it.
Okay.
Oh, that's good. Thank you.
Randy, maybe I'm getting ahead here by talking about this at this point. We have a number of modest capital improvements suggested. When are we going to talk about those? Is that later here in the program?
Yes.
Actually, we're coming up on it.
Okay.
So, any other, so I think we're pretty much done with the little book. So I think the next, we'll move on to the big book, and that's really going to be a lot of Ingrid, so I'll turn it over to her.
So if we can turn to page 133 in the big book, that will start us on the special revenue funds. And those special revenue funds, so those include our 102 fund, which is our arterial street improvements, the 103, which is our local street improvements, and then the 105, which is our arterial street preservation program. So this is really generated towards capital improvements for streets. In 13 and 14, some of our accomplishments within those areas.
What page are you on?
Page 133 of the big book. So some of those accomplishments, specifically in our arterial street improvement fund, we completed several transportation safety and capacity and operational improvements throughout the city. A significant one of those was our M Street underpass project. We're in the middle of completing our Auburn Way South and M Street intersection improvement, which is including that right turn pocket on Auburn Way South. The Lee Hill Safe Routes to Schools up on Lee Hill, affecting Rainier, Hazelwood Elementary, and Lee Hill Elementary. Our 8th Street and 104th intersection improvements, safety improvements, those are underway right now and will be completed before the end of the year, as well as completing several guardrail and other traffic improvements to help improve the safety of those systems. We also completed the execution of agreements with our project partner, the developer for the RPG site, to secure funding for our South 277th Street. That led us to also be able to secure 2 grants for that project, which make that project fully funded. Within the 103 fund, our Save Our Streets fund, we continued with our local street improvement, including the reconstruction of several roadways over both years, as well as doing overlays and patching on several roads. For our arterial street preservation, in 2014, we actually completed our first bridge maintenance project on our street. So I don't know if any of you have driven that bridge over the White River on our street, but completed a resurfacing and some improvements to the joints on that bridge, as well as completed our arterial street preservation program, including crack sealing of our arterial roadways. For the goals coming up in those funds over the next 2 years, obviously we have several construction projects that are planned and in the works. That includes that South 277 widening project to complete the construction of that. We have 3 funded projects on Auburn Way South between the Muckleshoot Plaza intersection and Hemlock. Those will all be completed in that time frame. And then we also recently received a grant to complete our West Main Street multimodal corridor improvements. In addition, we're going to continue to fund the Lakeland Hills Shuttle program with King County and Pierce County.
So I noticed that went down in the budget. Why is that?
The agreement right now, I believe, takes us through 2015, and so that is what's currently in the budget. However, we're beginning conversations with both King County and Pierce County about continuing that.
So the fact that it goes from 200 to 135 in 2016
Okay,
is not a for sure deal you're
that
talking about?
actually, so the shuttle program for Lakeland Hills is bus, I believe it's 496. The reason that went down is from the King County cuts that have happened this year for our 910 and 917. So we were paying for one of those routes, and that's the reduction is for that route that King County is no longer going to be running.
So we got a 33% cut in that particular thing, huh?
Well, and for that
We went
route,
from 200 to 135 on the shuttle. I'm looking at page 138. That's where you actually have those numbers. Under professional services.
Yes, so the shuttle route that in the downtown area that is funded by us with Metro, partially funded by us, runs through September of 2015. After that, that goes away in what Metro's current proposed cuts are. And so that's why you see a reduction between 15 and 16 is the loss of that route.
Is that the 910?
I believe so.
Okay, got it.
So the 910 did not get cut in the February cuts.
No.
But the 919 and the 152 will be gone as of September 27th, I believe.
So do we get a reimbursement from September to December then?
So we only pay for the 910 route. We do not pay for the 917 route.
No, the 919.
919.
919.
So the 910 is the one that we pay
Okay.
for. So we will continue to pay for that one as long as we.
Because that was
All
funny,
right.
because yesterday at the Regional Transit Committee meeting, they were showing both the 910 and the 919 being reimbursed, partially reimbursed by the city. So, just information for the group.
And so other goals within our special revenue funds for 2015 and 2016 is continuing our Save Our Streets program, and again, continuing to focus on the reconstruction projects in those areas. And then also continuing our arterial preservation program. Again, continuing to focus on patching and overlaying where appropriate. In addition, for the next 2 years, we actually received several grants for preservation, both within King County and Pierce County. And so those 105 funds will actually be used to help with the match required for those grants.
Can we look at page 204 at the funding for SOS? Going down from 2,006,000, so it was up, way up in 2015, and we're down again in 2015. Why the up and down of those 204 numbers?
204?
204.
So over the last several
Oh.
years, our
Oh,
projects
got it.
in the SOS fund have been coming in under budget. And so it's been building up a little bit additional capacity in that fund. So in 2015, we are intending to spend down some of that additional capacity that's been created. And then 2016, we're back to basically just using the funds that are coming in that year.
Okay.
That's right.
Makes sense.
This
Any other questions?
I wanted to add this one thing real quick. So, and you're already aware of this a little bit from your council retreat, but one of the goals that this department, administration, and other departments have is, particularly finance, is to begin conversations with council on both short-term and long-term funding opportunities for both our local and arterial streets. And we recognize, and you know this as well as we do, that our funding options are limited, but we need to make sure that we're exploring all of them. So you will have an opportunity a little bit later this month in another capacity as the board of the Transportation Benefit District to have a beginning conversation about that. But we'll be looking at other opportunities for funding, both more likely probably beginning in early 2015, since we're not going to be able to have that information and that analysis done before the end of the year, but we'll have a fairly long conversation, I anticipate, with the council and the mayor and the community about that. So that will factor in ultimately, perhaps at some point, to how these budget numbers are reflected, both this budget and possibly in the future.
Is this the right point to talk about specific projects in the tip that are in here?
We can if you'd like to.
Page 153. The F Street non-motorized improvements, which is really, to me, is mainly figuring out how to get people from downtown to Let's Go Community Campus without going in their car. And I wanted that to happen for a long time, and when I see that the police department is going to have their bike people working both of those, seems like an opportunity to learn how the cops figure out how to do it, and then we do it, you know. And so I'm not saying I don't like the 400,000, I think that's about right, but I hope that we will leverage off of what the police department's going to do over the next year to figure out exactly how to do this.
So the
tip of the bid.
400,000 in 2015 is just design funds at this point, and then 200,000 in 2016 for design as well. And that one, we do have a grant that we actually received that is funding the design for that roadway. And we have also actually submitted that to the Transportation Improvement Board for construction funding, and we're waiting to hear.
Yeah, I understand, and it's way more than 400,000 to get it done, probably, but I understand when I heard Chief Lee talking about sharing his bicycle guys back and forth on exactly this route we've been trying to get done for years, seems like an opportunity to work that.
And I might add, with the teen youth center and community center efforts, I think we have a learning opportunity with that in terms of how it relates back to this project. So we'll have an opportunity in the very near future to, I think, have a conversation that will influence this as well.
It's a connectivity.
So, and just a question on the design fees for 15 and 16 in relation to the forecasted right-of-way construction. Are there more elements of construction that may be included, or it appears that the design fees and projection are substantially high in relation to the construction cost?
Which one are you talking about?
This is on page 153 on your F Street, and it's on the forecasted project cost of 1.8 million against the 15 and 16 budget of 600,000 for design.
A third.
So the project is planned to utilize a consultant for design work for that roadway, so that's always going to be a little bit more expensive than when we do internal design work. This is also, again, we have a federal grant, and we also are, again, applying for a state EID grant for the project. So the federal process requires a significant amount of paperwork and additional cost that plays into those fees on the design side as well as on the construction management.
Well, Claude, I've always used 30% as a rule of thumb of what it's going to cost me in soft costs versus hard costs, and that's about what this is.
Okay, well, that, for me, 30% is a very high number.
It is for your kind of business, but I think, just like Kringer's saying, transportation is expensive for so many stupid reasons, but it is.
No, and I'm not disputing it, just the clarification, which is good clarification.
Yeah.
Because we know how high fees are on the design side.
And because we've done grant applications for that project, we have a very detailed engineer's estimate that those numbers are based on.
Okay, good, thank you.
Any other questions on the special revenue fund? Then we can go to the water fund, which starts on page 224.
What page?
224.
Thank you.
So our accomplishments for 2015, 2016 in our water fund. I'm only going to highlight a couple of these because I think if we go through every single accomplishment, we'll be here until about 8 o'clock. So for the water fund, one of our big accomplishments has been initiating the unidirectional flushing program, which we have completed the Lee Hill service area, and we're in the process of completing the Northern Valley service area. This allows us to flush material that has accumulated within the lines out of the lines, which helps our overall final water quality and our ability to maintain the system better. We also are completing the negotiation and execution of the agreement with COMA for COMA Public Utilities for the water rights that we have secured from both them and Cascade Water Lines. Some of the major accomplishments as we go forward into the next 2 years is initiating the construction of the water utility meter and billing system improvements. That's the AMI system that we discussed at a previous CAP, as well as continuing to improve the use of our cartograph system for both the work order management for our SOPs and improving those databases for the water system itself to help us with both our long-term planning for projects as well as our maintenance.
Ingrid, I don't see a objective of doing better on conservation. When I look at your chart during 226, consumption for residential equivalent is just staying flat. We're not doing very good at saving water. So I would think there ought to be an objective in 2015-16 to work that more, the conservation side.
So one of the things that we have in our current proposed policies for the comprehensive plan for water is, again, a focus on conservation, but also kind of a bottom line target for that, because there is a point at which, you know, your conservation in the water system actually becomes a point where it hurts your system and the ability to function.
Hurts you on operation, but doesn't hurt you, but it helps you in capital, is my view. And, you know, we got lots of big capital projects, and they're all based on consumption. And so I still think that it pays to make that chart that you've got there go downhill instead of be flat.
So maybe a suggestion very quickly is maybe at a future date we could come back and have a more broader conversation on that and really get into the detail, because I think there are, as Inger pointed out and as Shelley and I were sidebarring, there's that balance point. I think it would be good for the council to maybe explore that in depth if the mayor and the council are okay with that, not at a budget related meeting, but maybe at a future committee of the whole or another meeting format.
Well, I think we're going to do a cost of service analysis briefing soon, I think, in fact. And to the degree you can talk about this balance between operational costs and capital costs, particularly with respect to conservation, because years and years ago, I bet it's 25 years ago, I went to a regional water quality planning thing, and they essentially said if we'd all conserve more water, we'd be all okay. Well, you know, I think that we haven't really gone as far as we can go on conservation. So we need to see the numbers around this balance point at some point.
Can I speak something? At the last regional water quality meeting, we talked about conservation and how conservation is affect at wastewater treatment plants, because we have conserved so much that we've been able to push out capital projects considerable length of time because of water conservation that has occurred within the King County area itself. So I think you're getting a lot more water conservation than you really think you are.
Then why does our chart look flat for
Well, I'm
2000?
talking about overall King County and in the wastewater division.
You're talking about regional.
Well, I'll bet if we took this chart back 10 years, yeah, we would show that it went downhill, because we put in financial incentives in the rates to make people want to conserve, and they did for a while, but now it looks like it's flattened out again. All I'm saying is it seems like you could keep going down forever, probably, but you don't want to go past that balance point of the economics of it.
In our water comp plan, we have reduced the amount of water per person per day in that plan itself, because it used to be, I think it was 360, and now it's down to 240 or something like that. Help me out in that area. Yeah.
How come the government do that when it says it's flat here?
Well, you also got to realize the city is growing.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that was my point, exactly, that when, in our residential, maybe not so much, but during the recession, our water consumption did fall considerably, and we do have quite a bit of residential construction that's been going on in our water service area. And so what is that point? And maybe we don't have 2014 in yet, but you can see what we have here. It's been ratcheting down in 2011, 2012, 2013, and I think 2014, 15, and 16 are taking some growth into estimates there. And, you know, it'd be interesting to see what they actually turn out to be.
Well, and the fact is we have 745 single-family residents coming online. So when you start adding those numbers in, your overall consumption is actually going to be going up.
Yeah, but this is per residential connection.
Looking at the consumption, and this may not be even an accurate measurement, but have we ever looked at measuring what our consumption is per connection against a regional, state, or national number?
I don't know that off the top of my head if we've compared that in the past.
You just hear a lot of things going on nationally of where, and it's all over the map naturally, but I think it's something we might want to explore and just see where do we stand, because we might be really good, or we might need some work.
Well, it depends on where you...
Depends on your location.
It depends on location. I mean, I wouldn't want to compare ourselves to Arizona.
No, I agree.
No, I think
It's got to be
California.
more, it's got to be closer aligned to what we do and how we do it. But
So maybe something more on a regional level. I
Sure.
don't know if a national statistic. It would be interesting to see where we fall, but I don't know if it would really give us any valid information.
Yeah, I think
for
a true measure would be
something
regional
more
measurement, so,
regional.
again, if the mayor and council are interested, I would recommend, because I think just in this short conversation, a lot of good ideas and questions have come up, and maybe we could either in concert with the cost of service, or depending on how much you want to get into that conversation, maybe a follow-up conversation along with that. Okay.
So, any other questions on the water?
Yeah, I got a question on page 251 on Coal Creek Springs rehab project. Even though it's been years outside of this biennial budget, I still want to talk about it while I think about it. Are you there?
What's the question? I couldn't.
Well, the question is, have we fully taken into account the water we're going to buy from Tacoma in this planning for Coal Creek Springs? And have we, planned on the use it or lose it and all that stuff that goes with the water rights? This is a pretty big project, $3.5 million. And it's kind of back to the conservation thing, capital is such a big event in water that we need to pay a lot of attention to it. And this is one that I'm wondering if we've fully analyzed how much we will probably buy from Tacoma as opposed to generate real sources.
So one of the things that we're working on right now in Tacoma, so the next stage after we get the agreement done with them is basically the market rate adjustment. That's going to involve us determining a minimum amount that we want to purchase from Tacoma through that agreement that we will be paying for every year whether we use it or not. And so when we go through and do that calculation to determine how much water that is that we can take to supplement the rest of our water sources, that may affect some of these projects. In our comprehensive planning that we're working on right now, we are also looking at which of our water sources do we want to make improvements on, which ones can we delay till further, including the assumption of taking the full 3.5 that is in our current Tacoma agreement. So that's in that planning process. Again, that comp plan is a little delayed from where we're at in the budget, so in future years you may see some of these projects shift and change their location, but this is the best information we have right now.
Okay.
And those agreements, as well as the water comprehensive plan, is something that council will be able to review in the next few months.
Any other questions on water? So if we're ready to jump to the sewer fund, it starts on page 275. Okay, so again, focusing on just a couple of the accomplishments, a couple of the goals as we're going forward into 2015-2016 for the sewer fund. We continue to focus on continuing the improvements with our new SCADA system at each of the pump stations, making sure that we have the correct monitoring, alarming, and the data acquisition that we want so that we can monitor what those pump stations are doing under that new system. And then a big focus over this next 2 years is going to be completing that comprehensive plan for the sanitary sewer system. The goals going forward, coordinating with innovation and technology, coordinating with them the use of our cartograph system with our pipe logics asset management tools, as well as continuing to train staff on some of the sewer line inspection standards to enhance our pipe condition information and consistency within our system. So again, all of that feeds into the asset management part of the system to determine when we need to make improvements to the sewer system, when maintenance and operations needs to do maintenance work on a system. So that's basically a focus within that sewer system.
Can you give me just some examples of what you would classify as preventative maintenance activities? What would that include?
So a lot of the preventive maintenance activities that we do a lot of wet well cleaning, mainline cleaning. We do video inspection to look for defects, to look for root intrusion, for different things. We do routine maintenance, weekly routine maintenance on all of our pump stations
checking valve conditions, run hours, amperage use, all those kind of things, which can give us indicators of what kind of condition the pump impellers are in. If we're using a lot of run hours, low amperage, that means our impeller is damaged and we're not pumping anything. So we're constantly out there every day monitoring all the different aspects of the system, as well as when Ingrid talked about the SCADA, that does a lot of monitoring for us. So we're having to do a lot less trips to the station now. We can go in and look at the SCADA and look at all these results.
Also, one of the objectives I would think is trying to reduce I&I as much as possible, or put in something reference I&I, because I got a funny feeling that we're going to see something coming down from the county eventually asking us to reduce the I&I into the sewer system. And I think that might be something that we want to get in our objectives, or at least have in our comp plan, so that we're meeting those objectives before they even ask us to meet them.
What's our I&I?
Infiltration, water coming into the line, or people putting, round manhole coverage and stuff like this.
Okay.
But it really occurs a lot in wet weather. There's a tremendous amount of water that goes into the system that then you have to process at the plants that you shouldn't have to do.
Yeah, and I&I is a focus within our comprehensive plan.
Yeah.
Within sewer for looking at that situation. Within our sewer program, we have our repair replacement program, which covers a lot of looking for where we have issues with our lines, and that includes I&I, especially as we do our inspections. If we see that we have significant issues, then those go into that repair replacement program on an annual basis.
Also, for council's information, the Skyway area in Renton, near Renton there, they did a I&I project, several $1 million, and the final results were not that positive. In other words, they went in and they did put in new lines, and the end result was not a very positive.
Well, the return on investment wasn't what they had anticipated.
That's right.
Because a lot of those people had their stormwater coming off their house going into the sewer system. Well, when they did the smoke test, they found that out because smoke would come out through their gutters on the house. But I don't think we have that problem here, but you do have that constant I&I problem, and I think it's just something that we need to be aware of.
On page 277, Ingrid, the working capital budget. On sewer, it's high and remains high. We're only improving they're doing increases in fixed assets of a couple million a year, and we're charging ourselves depreciation and amortization about that amount to cover that. So why are we keeping such a high working capital over this time period? Why aren't we using up some of that to reduce rates?
So part of what's going on with the comprehensive plan with sewer is also looking at what are its needs. The current analysis of our existing system is not showing a significant capacity issue with our system. So a lot of what you're going to see going into the future is really repair and replacement programs.
So you're saying we may use some of this $8 million to reduce rates? Okay. Now, I mean, it doesn't cut rates a big amount, but I always wonder, or I always kind of am not impressed by big working capital amounts over a long period of time. And that's kind of looks like what sewer's doing.
And the current rates go through 2017 for all three of the utilities. And so we'll be looking at those again in 2017 for what we need to do going from there forward for all three utilities.
Okay. Weren't we running a negative there for a while on our sewer bills, and that's why we did some rate increases in the last couple of years?
Yeah, it was the operating income and loss. We've had some capital that's been living at the bottom of this for some time, but where we weren't meeting it was where our net income, we had a huge loss. We can't use the cash at the bottom of the statement to create a positive income. And for our bond covenants to have the coverage factor, we do use the three utilities So it's the coverage factor is calculated with the 3, but this was...
So that's why we're doing the big working capital, for coverage?
That's why the rates needed to increase, is to get coverage. And you can see that our net operating income, our loss, has been reducing. But we use the water and the storm fund, their net income, so we meet our bond coverage. And we also are able to take out depreciation as an expense when we're doing that calculation. So we do look at to make sure we have positive after we add back in the the depreciation. So you can see that we've come far more positive on the net working capital.
I don't understand your comment that you can't use working capital as a part of the equation of how you create rates.
Can't. You see the money at the bottom of the statement, the the 7 million, the 10 million.
Right.
When we do our to reduce rates, I would say that what's been driving, we need to look at the last rate study and how much of that component of the rate was to service capital projects and increases. And there were capital projects that were anticipated and debt service that is existing in the fund. And we can use that for the capital, the debt service payment. Now, as far as the rates, we needed the rates to cover just the day-to-day operations. That's Randy's crews out there maintaining those lines.
You're going to have to explain this to me one of these days, because I don't think I understand how that goes, but that's another conversation.
Okay.
Ingrid?
Yes.
Page 280. Small tools at the very top. Small tools.
Yes?
What kind of small tools do you guys procure?
So that can be equipment for the staff for being able to open the manholes. It's not significant tools. It's basically what they need day to day to be able to get in, monitor, manage the system when they're doing work.
I would have thought that once you buy them, then you have them.
Only if craftsmen's, they last for a long time, but otherwise you'd have to replace them.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Sue? So then we'll go to Storm, which is starting on page 300. And again, just going over a couple of the accomplishments and goals, not going over all of them. So for our accomplishments for 2014, we actually began doing a fairly extensive storm drainage inventory process to improve our records of the overall storm drainage system. A lot of this had to do with making sure that we had accurate records for the areas that we had annexed in 2008. As we got into some issues and complaints from various folks, we found that we didn't necessarily have all of the information we needed for where their lines were, both public and private up in those areas. And so in working with IT, we've been doing a fairly extensive inventory to get that information into our system so that we have knowledge of exactly where those pipes, manholes, and catch basins actually are. The other significant accomplishment from that group was we actually applied for and received a grant from the Department of Ecology to improve our storm drainage system at our maintenance and operations facility. That was just slightly under $1 million for that grant, so that's fairly significant funding. This is going to help us replace the antiquated detention system that's out there that doesn't quite meet the needs of what that site should be doing, and also improve our water quality from our own facilities. As we go forward in the storm fund, a big focus for the next 2 years is going to be bringing ourselves into compliance with the requirements of the new NPDES Phase 2 permit. Two things within that, a fairly significant effort that will be going on both with our department as well as several other departments in the city is incorporating the requirement for the low-impact development techniques to become a primary solution and not a alternate solution in new development. and in our own projects as well. In addition, we also need to go through and adopt another updated version of a Department of Ecology equivalent manual for our stormwater surface management. So those are some significant efforts that need to be done within the next 2 years and have some very specific timeframes for completing that work.
I think some of you have heard this already from us, but the low-impact development techniques that Ingrid, that is going to have business practice changes for us, not just in the operational area, but also in our land development regulations. And so we're going to be having a lot of policy conversations with council to help you understand the changes that we have to make in the policy arenas. And it's going to likely reduce some of the flexibility that we've been able to apply, because the alternate term that Ingrid just used is no longer alternate, it's prescriptive now, and we have to start requiring low-impact development. We don't have a choice. So it's going to be an interesting conversation internally, and it's going to be an interesting conversation with our external clients, who are probably going to struggle with that a little bit, at least initially.
Will that cause additional cost for all the development within the area?
Yeah, I think it's easy to say that. The scale is unknown. Yeah.
Ingrid? Yes. You might, could you refresh my mind what M&O is?
Maintenance and operation.
Okay, thank you. You have it on here several times, so thank you.
On page 301, third bullet from the top, can you explain that, please?
So with the underpass project, we put in a pump station that actually drains the underpass area, and that connects into some existing storm lines in M Street that are north of 3rd Street. And that line is undersized right now and needs to be increased in size from there to Main Street. And so that's one of our projects in our capital program over the next 2 years, is to complete that improvement. It's more of a factor when we have a very significant storm as to the potential for having water come out of that storm system and backflow into the underpass area.
Thank you.
Did you say which direction it flows?
It flows to the north and then eventually makes its way over to the Green River through a district.
Why didn't we flow it south where we put in the new storm line?
So all of that area actually flows to the north and to a discharge point in the Green River along M Street. So to flow it south, we don't have a discharge point to take it to.
Because I know we put in a whole stormwater line all the way along M Street, or I thought from almost the bridge all the way south.
But it flows north.
But that flows north. And that flows
Yeah,
north.
fine, but it
So
flows
the new
north.
line goes into a smaller line.
Like the Nile.
Correct. So we need to fix that smaller line.
Oh, that's interesting.
Any other questions on this one?
We got slope thinking about linear flows,
So the only other one that I have in there would be our Metro 433 fund, and that is basically just a pass-through of the Metro for our customers.
And Councilmember Wagner, we pulled the Metro out so we could get a lens on that sewer fund for the operations and the capital, because the Metro money running through there, and sometimes it ebbs and flows, it just was very confusing.
right, good move.
Oh, and also, so you know, on January 1st, you've probably already been informed that King County Metro is increasing their rates to $42.03, which is about a 10% increase from this year.
Fund the county through their sewer.
Any other questions on any of those funds? I'm going to pass it to Randy to go over it.
It's 9 something.
All right, so the last fund that we have to discuss currently is the court rental division. Basically, that's our fleet maintenance for the entire city.
Randy, can you tell the page number?
Oh, sorry. Page 345. So currently, some of the accomplishments, every year we continue to improve the fleet fuel economy, utilizing several options. We've got some new Zonar technology, which is a automated vehicle location system. It also monitors whether the vehicles are running. We can monitor idle times, those kinds of things, and then we can work with the operators to try and reduce that idling. There's some studies out there currently that say if you can reduce your idling process, that you can reduce 1/3 of your fuel usage per year. So we're currently hitting that pretty hard. Last year we did go through and do a idle reduction policy, which under certain conditions you're allowed to idle a vehicle, but in most conditions about a minute is it, and then it needs to be shut off. So, and we have been seeing some significant changes with that. We also are monitoring some new vehicle fuel types. We did purchase a CNG vehicle last year. We have one in the fleet. We're reviewing how that's working, how cost effective it is. And then some of the objectives for 15-16, we're actually looking at some other types of vehicles, some strictly electric vehicles. We're also looking at propane vehicles, which in the local area are actually panning out a little bit better than the CNG. So we may test a couple of those, see how those work out, but those are some of the things that we're looking at. We're also past accomplishments and future objectives. One thing that we're always looking at is trying to extend the life of the fleet. Over the last 4 or 5 years, we've extended the average life cycle of the fleet from 6.5 years to almost 10 years currently. And that's just basically by utilizing better vehicles, utilizing the vehicles as long as we can, as well as even if we have a frontline vehicle that we can't depend on to be that daily driver, there may be quite a few miles left in that. So we may replace that with a new vehicle and then take that vehicle and give it to somebody else that's only using the vehicle 2 times a week. So we're getting quite a bit better utilization, and we're not seeing a huge reduction in the surplus value of the vehicles. You know, if they're an 8-year-old vehicle, we're seeing about the same price when they're a 10-year-old.
Yeah. I got a couple of those at home.
Can you make sure the air conditioner works?
And you can see that we've increased some of those life cycle averages through our performance measures. You can see how those are done. Excuse me. And I don't know if anybody knows, but we have about 273 vehicles in fleet that we maintain.
Wow.
How many?
About 273.
Thank you.
Any fleet-related questions?
Yeah, on page 362.
362?
About $1 million worth of capital improvements, and I don't argue with any of these. I think they're all necessary. But the thing that crossed my mind is, do you have a need during emergency situations for your operators to have space for whatever, sleeping or recovering or eating or all the things that happen during those 10 days a year where you've got guys working around the clock? Have you thought through that? As long as we're doing $1 million worth, should we be doing that as well?
Yes, what we've done actually across the entire M&O division is we got together, I want to say it's probably been 6 or 7 years ago, and we went through and purchased a temperature-controlled storage container, a 20-foot storage container, and we've got enough supplies, bedding, cots, everything that you can think of in there to house 10 people at any one time. And then we continually go through and we we get rid of the supplies as they age and those kinds of different things. But we've got meals, like I said, cots, sleeping quarters, all that stuff. And then we've got areas at M&O that we've actually designated that if we're in an emergency where people couldn't get back home, then we would designate those as sleeping areas. We've got shower facilities, we've got laundry facilities, so.
Good, thank you.
Huh?
Just give us the address and we'll know where to go.
I guess I got one question. Is there anything new in this budget that's been added in the last couple of days that we have not discussed?
No, this budget was sent to print a week or two prior to these budget meetings starting. So no, there's been nothing new added at all. This is a presentation of the draft budget that was prepared by the directors and myself. And what you see is what we currently have.
But not necessarily what we're going to get.
No, that's correct. This is draft, that's why it's going through review. I've heard a couple of comments about some things that council would like to see go into the budget, and so I've spoken with Shelley about some of those, and Shelley is looking at opportunities to make those changes to the budget. Certainly before you ever voted on the budget, most of you have gone through the budget process before, you would have an opportunity to go through the entire budget again and make sure that the changes to any of the comments had been updated, and I know Bob has been taking copious notes on that, and those changes are being implemented, and also opportunities for a few items that I have heard that there is interest in adding to the budget, such as, Wayne, I think you had talked about some funding for sidewalks.
Yeah.
And I know there had been some interest by council as well on increasing the amount that was in the admin budget for downtown improvements.
Yes.
And then also the opportunity for additional kiosks. Yes. I think we have maybe two.
It's a start.
Two more is what we're looking at. So Shelley is going back through to look at potential for those. If the sidewalks are in our comp plan, then we could potentially utilize REAP 2 for that funding. And then the other amounts, we would need to look at opportunities for finding probably $100,000 in additional funds or rebalancing something to make those accomplishments.
And with those things added, and you're still going through program improvements here.
Haven't gotten there yet.
I know, it hasn't. I need to leave. I have an appointment at 5, so I need to leave. But the mayor and I talked about those items that she just mentioned, and we will go back and make those things happen. Make those things happen, and look in our capital fund. I think I have an idea for the kiosks and the downtown funding and how we can get some money. Might be transferring it out of a fund into the fund that's going to do the work. And so with that, and once we get through the program improvements, we're done today, we will start preparing the preliminary budget.
And as it relates to kiosks, let's remind council, and I think the mayor said this previously too, we may have some opportunities with developers in the downtown area who have expressed interest in possibly helping to pay for some of those, so that's another option for us.
So we could end up with maybe even more than 2.
We could end up with more than that, yes.
Oh.
And not all of them at the city's expense.
Yeah.
So if we can, first of all, thank you for your patience. We had a lot to go through, and I appreciate you hanging in there with us. We're almost done. I did commit to the rest of the directors that we would be the longest, and I'm fulfilling that commitment, so I don't want to break down on them yet. But I'm going to ask you to go back to your small book. Sorry, but that's the way that we put together. And ask you to go to the program improvements area and ask you to go to page 205 of that book. So our department has put forward a number of program improvement proposals for your consideration. on page 205, this we spoke to it earlier. This is the greenhouse gas inventory and climate action plan. We are requesting $25,000 in 2015 and $25,000 in 2016 to help pay for consultant services. This is a specialized area, and while Chris is incredibly talented, I think he would like some assistance in this area because it is doing the inventory update work as a specialized function, and then the policy development is a specialized function. And there's some really good consultants out there that we can work with. We actually used a consultant back in 2010 when we put together the original greenhouse gas inventory. So again, we see value in this both to the city in terms of its municipal operations. This is a multi-departmental effort. When we did the original inventory, we worked across departments. We wouldn't be doing that again. And this would help inform potential changes in business practices. Along with, it would also help us in bringing forward policy considerations for council to discuss and possibly act on as it relates to actions that the council might want to take now or in the future relating to climate change. As I mentioned earlier, more and more of our granting agencies are expecting to see climate action planning as part of the city's suite of policy information. So it's not something that we can necessarily continue to not have at least substantive conversation about, because it is an expectation from those that provide money to us to help us do good things for our community.
I would like to add that this is a check mark for grant opportunities, and it's also an energy, environment, and natural resources topic that we talk about all the time, climate change.
Any questions on that proposal? Okay, I'll move on in the interest of time. So our next is page 206, and this is code enforcement abatement. So we are asking the council to consider 2015 and 2016 $50,000 respectively in each year of funding. What we have done in the past for abatement is we have literally gone into our budget and scraped together the money to try to do abatement actions that the council has supported, because we have not had a specific line item to go to. This has always been a challenge because we're making trade-offs with other needs, but we believe that by having a dedicated line item and actually being able to go and use those monies, we won't be robbing Peter to pay Paul, so to speak, and it will allow us to increase our abatement activity and start addressing more proactively some of the outstanding issues that you as council members either hear about or see in your travels around the community. This relates to properties that have been abandoned or have other issues where we have been unable, despite hard work on the part of staff and from multiple departments, to get compliance by either the occupant or the owner, and it's gotten to the point where it's become a negative impact. I think several of you have had the opportunity to see presentations by staff on abatement actions where we've been able to go in and clean up and substantially improve the neighborhoods, and we've gotten positive feedback from the neighborhoods because certainly they have to live with it day in, day out. So we think it's a good use of city dollars, and it helps neighborhood stability and also neighborhood quality of life. Questions I can answer?
I think this is an extremely good idea, putting this money in that area, because I know there's still other areas that we've had difficulty because we knew it was going to cost a lot of money to do a complete abatement, and we haven't been able to do it as well as we'd like to do it. And I think this may allow us to do that in the future.
I also like this because I think you're looking at it from a more comprehensive point of view. You're looking at it from an officer, from funds to do the abatement, from a vehicle. I mean, you're looking at it holistically. Sometimes, in government, people come to us with a request, and we think it's just a simple little piece, and we forget all of the pieces that it takes to get the job done. And so I'm really pleased to see this total package. Nice job.
Kevin, in regards to the code enforcement officer, do you want to share, since there would be 3 code enforcement, do you want to share a little bit about what you and Chief Lee had talked about regarding the zoning in the city, or the districts within the city?
Yeah, the chief and I have had a really great conversation, and certainly I'll ask him to weigh in if he wants to. But if the council is supportive of a 3rd code enforcement officer, the chief and I have talked about the idea of actually pairing a community response team member with the code enforcement officer in zones of the city and put them basically on a rotation, 2-year rotation, so that they would be able to actually become embedded in that area of the city, get to know property owners, get to know businesses, be able to work as a team. And we think it's a really great way to create relationships in the community, create familiarity, and really more innovative way of maybe either stopping or preventing issues from getting out of hand, both on the police and the code enforcement side. I don't know, Chief, if you want to add anything.
You know, that's been the philosophy of the city that I'm very proud of, and that is not just the big sledgehammer, but the concept of building communication, building community, and providing education. So that sounds, we're going to be able to have the staff to get the in-depth understanding of that area, which will enhance compliance and education.
And I mentioned earlier, the difference between having 2 and 3 code enforcement officers is night and day for us. We moved from a reactive model to a proactive model. And we did have 3 code enforcement officers prior to the recession, and we were able to do a lot more work. The team that we have now, they work incredibly hard, but they're primarily reactive. They just don't have the capacity. It really puts us in a new realm of doing business and a more collaborative way of doing business, particularly with our partners in police.
Not only that, but the mayor touts one Auburn, don't you, Mayor?
Yes, I do.
Well, I've added a little word in there. It says,
it's mine.
it says, one, in Friends, clean Auburn. One clean Auburn.
Well, it also, as John was saying, it's that community policing approach. It's allowing for that small town feel that we all still believe in. And we are a larger city. We're approaching 75,000 people, and sometimes it's difficult to have that community approach. But I think this really goes a long way to allow opportunities for enforcement. First, advocate, educate before you ever do any type of enforcement. But this will go a long ways in providing that relationship between business owners, residents, and the city of Auburn.
I'm really excited, I have to say, the chief approached me about that about a month ago, and it hadn't entered into our thought process yet, and it was a stupendous idea. So Jeff Tate and I are very excited about the opportunity and appreciate the chief coming up with a really great idea. So kudos to the chief. That's where that came from. Okay, so we did talk about the code enforcement officer, which was on page 207, but are there any other questions before we move on? So next program improvement proposal is page 208. This is our development regulations update. We've talked a little bit about the comprehensive plan update work that we've been doing. We are going to have to be done with that by June 30th, 2015, but we have a big job after that, which is we have to update pretty much all chapters of our development regulations. That's 34 chapters. We have to update environmental regulations, our shoreline master program, and potentially our subdivision regulations. That's a lot of work. We also anticipate there's probably approximately 50 other chapters that will need to be reviewed in order to assure that we're consistent and compliant with the new comprehensive plan update. It's a lot of work, so what we would like to do is to have the opportunity, if council is supportive, to hire a consultant to assist us so that we can maintain our customer service ability to help clients who we deal with on a daily basis, and not be pulling staff fully off to work on that, which will be a very consuming effort. Obviously, we'll have staff working in collaboration with the consultant, but we feel that we can be better service providers to internal and external clients if we have that consultant resource. Are there any questions I can answer? Okay, I'll move on. Page 209. So this is what we're calling downtown cleanup. This is kind of a new concept for us. We've had some conversations at various forums with, I think, the majority of the council that we are entering kind of a new phase with our downtown, and with the Trek project and Merrill Gardens and other projects coming down the pike, we have a whole new opportunity for our downtown that has not existed for a while, and it's an opportunity to really take community engagement and community conversations, both with property owners and business owners in the downtown, to a new level. To do that, we feel that we need some tools that we don't necessarily have in-house to be able to engage in a different way. When we go out and talk to our businesses and our property owners, we want to have constructive conversations. We want to show them the benefit of making investments in their property. We want to be able to do some projects, maybe demonstration projects. We've had some conversations about possibly taking a couple of parking spaces in our downtown and doing what some other communities are doing, where they're doing little pop-up parklets where they actually create a little seating area. We don't have a very wide sidewalk in our historic downtown, so there's a lot of places to sit outside that you see in other communities. But there are opportunities to do pop-up spaces where people can get that feeling, not permanent, we don't want to take away parking, but it's an opportunity maybe to try a demonstration and see how the community as it's in its whole, as well as the business and property owners respond. So we want to have some flexibility and opportunity, if council is supportive, to kind of do some direct engagement and some demonstration projects to show folks how downtown can be a little bit different and maybe operate a little bit differently as it comes out of its slumber.
I wish we could come with a different name than cleanup. That sounds like it's dirty, and it's not the case. You're trying to say it's finishing off little projects, cleaning up the loose ends. And
Enhancing downtown.
so
Downtown enhancement?
Downtown enhancement, yeah. I think that would
something
be.
like that,
Okay, we can do that. And are there any other questions about that? If not, that ends our portion of this presentation. Again, we want to thank you for your time. We had a lot to go over, and appreciate your patience. We are getting done a little bit early, so but if there are any other outstanding questions either I or the team can answer for you, we'd be happy to do so.
Kevin, for hiring a new consultant, what are we talking about cost? Is that going to be included in the...
For the development regulations, we have money. Apologize, I got to get right back to that. We have about $50,000 for each year, so about $100,000 over the 2 years to provide that assistance. That's the proposal.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? So we've spent a significant number of hours around these tables, poring over these books. I think you've all done a great job of studying these. You have a good understanding of how our city operates, and you've asked some great questions about the proposed budget. We've made, again, notes on some of the text changes that you've asked for. Shelley and I will be talking more about how to add those items that you've mentioned to me, the sidewalks, additional money for facade improvement, kiosks. I would never forget your kiosks. And so we'll be coming back. That will be part of the final draft that we present to you. But those items will be added in there. So I really want to thank each of you. Yes, Argo.
Well, we want to thank you. We want to thank you for the in-depth nature of what you've presented. You allowing us to ask really in-depth and difficult questions, and the spirit of sharing, and I think we were all impressed with the in-depthness of how all of you know your departments and things. And I want to personally thank you for being open to some of our ideas. I think this has just been one of the better ones that I've been through, though I haven't been through as many as Rich. What are you thinking, Rich?
I'm thinking that Mayor Regner used to give us 1 page for all of this, and Nancy gives us about 10 inches. Somewhere in between that is where I'd like to be.
I mean, today's session just seemed like an hour to me, so
Well, I wonder why.
This has been my first budget process with the city, and I have to echo your statements about staff, just phenomenal job.
Yeah.
Great presentations.
Yes.
Very comprehensive, very understandable. I've been through a lot of budgets, and I have to say that in going through the process on a fiscal or annual basis, you know your stuff well, and it's given us a lot of opportunity to be much better informed and much better educated, but also much better partners in the process. So, thank you.
And that's what the budget, really, council's main responsibilities are setting budget and setting policy. And we don't always take enough time to look at the budget. We're not ever going to agree on every single item that's in a budget, because that's just nature. We all have different perspectives that we're coming from. We all have some preferences on our projects that we have. But I think you have done an incredible job, really, of taking this all in. And
It's only
the
6
heavy
inches.
stack-
It's only 6 inches.
It's only 6 or 7 inches. So, Rich, I thought you were an engineer. Come on.
Where's that ruler?
Yeah, there it is. Let's see here.
Exaggerating again.
It is, well, it's 5.5 inches. So next year, see, it is between the 1 page and the 10 inches. Right in between. So, I really do appreciate your willingness to do all of this. And your comments and suggestions. I think the suggestions that have been made will definitely enhance the budget. It's something that we can all be proud of. It's realistic. We're always conservative in our revenue. And if we find that we have this great abundance of funding, we will make midterm corrections, and hopefully that would mean adding additional people. But we have to have the revenue streams in order to do that. We've got something right now that's realistic that we can actually do. And I agree with you, the directors and their teams have done an incredible job of putting this all together. You're reading it, but they had to write it. And that takes a lot of time to make sure that it's something that everyone can understand. So kudos to everybody involved in this process. Thank you so much for allowing us to bring this forward, and we're going to have a great year.
So does this mean the next budget meeting is canceled?
That would mean the next budget meeting is canceled.
Not that I didn't enjoy this.
I know. Every single minute of it. And we did understand the comments about economic development, and hopefully you can understand our approach that economic development is interwoven in every one of the things that we do. Code enforcement, if you have code enforcement, you don't have some of the blighted areas. So we're very proud of the work, and economic development is always in the forefront of our minds. So, thank you very much.